Brother, thank you so much for, I guess, speaking to me about all of this. And I really just want to talk to you about, I guess, your experience with being in the Foreign Legion in Ukraine and anything you can tell me about that.
Yeah, sure, no worries, but it's not gonna sound very good to be honest. Even when I'm planning to come back, I literally had my nearly last arrangements, pre-last arrangements to go back on the front lines with a different team and so on. Then yeah, but mainly it's really really bad because I served in different militaries, different private sectors all over the globe, and that was a sorry for my language was really 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 bad.
Yeah. In what way?
Okay, starting from the beginning, I fully understand when in the beginning it's third week of war when we nearly got deployed on the first combat deployment. It straight away was absolute chaos. It was first was with Erpin next to the Kiev. Of course, they collected really highly experienced blokes like myself, like some guys who come to the Foreign Legion. They spend a month training and then they go into the war, let's say war zones and stuff. But we had 2 nights to prepare, and we was heading then straight to the Kiev and straight to the airport.
Yeah.
They were really, really, really hiding information. You're constantly going into the blind, absolute blind. You go in, they send you, like I said, we went to the app and we straight away got smacked by artillery, direct sniper fire, and so on. We wasn't aware of where we're going, any maps, anything. It just, yeah, 34 blokes, foreign blokes. Um, we get you in the forest, we'll show you where to go, and good luck. It was
Right.
really poor organized. But like I said, I thought that was only the beginning because it was third week of war, and it's a big chaos. It's a Kiev still have what they call 60 miles convoy coming in, to assault Kiev and so on. But it continued and continued for, like I said, for another 2, 3 months. It was still the same, different units, different places, different commanders was still the same. They will drop us off in the middle of nowhere. We don't know where is the friendlies, where is the enemies, what our proper objective and so on. It was just released. Yeah. Okay, guys, just walk there 4 miles and then set an OP and like, yeah, okay, any friendlies, anything, any intel? No, no, nothing. Just go. That's the order. Literally that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that was just to the foreign fighters, or do you think that was like through the defense force wide?
This defense wars. Like my partner, she's into sports. She's like really highly at sports in
Mm,
Ukraine. I don't want to mention the titles and so
absolutely
on, but
not.
she's higher up, and she knows loads of people who does martial arts and her kind of. They just she have really wide circle of people who does the sports and especially martial artists. Most of them end up being in the front lines and stuff.
Yes.
And she knows many guys who've been fighting from 2014 from the first invasion. And she was saying, look, never changed. It always been the same. They always fought the same. They will send the blokes not knowing where they're going, what's their objective, or if they have any backup, like happened to a couple of my teams who got killed because they didn't had any backup when they requested it's just some cover fire from artillery. Didn't got any help. And the end, they find out that the guys from the artillery didn't had any rounds for the last 2 days. Like you sending your team into deep enemy territory, like 6 clicks, being surrounded by enemies, and you have nothing to back up your boys out if something happens in the area where already we had the combats and our guys died. Some famous names, who've been on television and so on. The guys died there, and you pushing again those guys back in into it just doesn't make sense. So many ops look like you just totally, suicide. Like your friends who got in contact both of us, he the same, he got sent out what less than a day on an combat op, and the guys got killed and heavily injured and so on. It's like, wow, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And what sort of casualties are we talking about? Is it 2% or is it 50%? Like, how many guys are dying on these ops?
Depending on the op, depending on the area under whose command, but I don't know. It could be 5%. It could be the team, which is quite famous. The guys all over the news. One of them got POW. Andy, and he got POW. I think if from the whole team, it's only one guy survived and one is POW
Right.
from 6 7 man team. Literally, we refused. Our team refused to go into that. Go back to the same location where we got absolutely hammered. Other team said, "Ah, we will go instead of you." And like I said, only one alive and one captured, and the rest of the guys are dead.
And how
And
often
yeah,
is that happening? Like, how often does a complete team just get eliminated?
in my case, that was only once, but the numbers is like ridiculous. The amount of the guys getting killed is just, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't want to speculate any numbers
Yeah.
without being, I just can't tell how the management was running, how, like I said, they were sending us left and right, and then how my personal free firearms disappeared from the armory. It's like, wow, that's brilliant, guys. That's a really good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my first AK disappeared from the armory with the pistol, and then my Bren disappeared. And after that, I had Belgium Scar L. It's like seriously, how the guns disappear from the armory. It's like loads of corruption, loads of really shady shit going on there.
Right. And can you tell me about some of the corruption that's happening?
Like let's say the guy who was in charge of the armory, the guns was constantly disappearing from the small firearms to big bigger toys, anti-armored vehicle stuff, anti-aircraft, low-flying anti-aircraft stuff. Things were disappearing. Um, the commander who was in charge was reported repeatedly to the special services who collected the statements from us multiple times, and they did nothing. And
Right.
it's like how it's possible the guy steals so much kit, and we actually, yeah, he steals and nothing happens. Or the guys who send so many teams to die into literally suicidal missions. So like, guys, that's straightforward death trap. It's like even no brainer. The guy with the minimal infantry skills, like you shouldn't go there. And most of us, most of us like highly experienced with 10 20 years of military experience of Middle East and so on, and they just don't want to listen. That's where you go, guys die. We then report and look, that commandment just incompetent to command. But they
Yes.
still get to command large numbers of people, and it's happening again and again. And now the same commander who officially apologize for losing so many people in Irpin and Bucha. Then he got the same into, I think it's Severodonetsk. Yeah, Severodonetsk. After that, now he's in charge in Zaporozhye. Again, he's losing people left and right. It's like, how the hell you keep those people in charge? And
Yeah.
it's not like, understand some ops you go in, someone's died, someone's get injured, and you're like, yeah, that was bad luck. Well, it just fighting, simple as that. But some you go, you look, and it's like, not you asking to die. That's just literally stupid shit you want us to do.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's the largest amount of my friends who died or got injured, literally through those ops. It's only a couple of my mates who died. They're like, well, that was a bad shit, bad luck.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
It
So
just
so
was.
sorry, you're saying so most people are, I guess,
No,
needlessly
yeah,
dying due to incompetence.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's incompetence. The thing is, huh, it's some kind of culture, because like I said, it was exactly the same happening with the Ukrainian soldiers, and especially veterans who have like a highly skilled. No one wants to listen usually.
Yes.
It's not like, we have a very very important man coming in one of the places where heavily fighting was happening, and he's from US, in regards of a heavy supplies of loads of equipment, from bullets to ammunition to uh, the newest drones and night visions and so on and so on. And he was like asking the commanders, because I was translator that day, and he was asking commanders of various teams, like a sniper team, and he said, why are you not fighting like in the guys fought in Middle East? You see the target, well, you sneak up, you see the target, you pop the target because they're usually the same locations, and you disappear and you repeat the same tactics.
Mm.
And the sniper team commanders' answer was Ukrainians. They tell us how to conduct the operations, and that fighting to get independence from Ukrainian incapable so many commanders was constantly being suppressed. Uh, like I said, I had 3 teams already, been in 3 different teams. A fourth one, I refused to go on the last combat all because I said, guys, we're sending you to die. And most of the team were, let's say 80, 70% guys never seen the combat here in Ukraine. I said, guys, I'm refusing to go. And guess what? You know who got injured? Another couple guys got injured. One got heavily injured, and one guy got killed in first 100 meters of the combat op, where because they didn't tell them what's going on. It's so much misinformation. Then I don't know. Like Ukrainians have a joke, like SF guys. I remember even in Erpin in the first weeks, they said so many Ukrainian commanders who've been retired, they came back to run the operations and units. And it's like, guys, you fight old school and you don't want to learn the new ways, how you fight guerrilla warfare. Maybe some do. I'm not saying all. It's just my personal experience, what I came across. But yeah, they just don't want to listen. It's like, guys, we can do it smarter. Nah, that's the orders. But that's stupid. Guys will die. Well, or you obey the order, or you get your contract cancelled, and that's it. There was no middle ground, and until this day I still hear the same stories. Guys just get sent, and nah, that's how we want. And it's like, but that's literally stupid.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. And you mentioned the corruption before of like weapons and things like that going missing. Are they being sold on, or are they just being stolen, or do you have any insight on that?
I don't know nothing for sure. I can only guess that it's to money, to gain money, because you know missing and law or Matador anti-low flying aircraft systems and so on. I can be sure they can cost serious money. Looks like there is for so many people now is war is, I don't know, not good but profitable
Yes.
time. And so many of them, now it's more and more projects going on in regards of finding, or the hardest way is to find the reliable sources where your donations and supplies and equipment can literally reach the right people. I know one of my colleagues, we fought together in Epin and Bucha, and he had a massive delivery from Czech Republic, hundreds of thousands pounds worth of magazines and so on. And he asked the local SBU team, and I said, look, it disappeared on when they entered the country, and I can't retract it. And they're like, oh, we don't know nothing about it, but we'll make investigation. And guess what? The same guy have another thousands worth of equipment, but he's now scared to send it. He's literally saying me, I will send it to you, and then you will distribute it where it need to be, because so many people just not relying on them because they know how it's corrupted. Lviv is now one of the most luxurious cities probably in the country, because most stuff goes there and disappears if it
Yeah.
if it crosses the border and so on. It's just pure corruption. Pure corruption. I thought they will pick up because it's a war against, if you lose this war, it's like it can't be worse. It's like the biggest price you can pay is lose the war. But people are still stealing left and right. Like my last pay haven't been paid, and we haven't got paid a single penny for our combat ops, and some guys who've been in combat ops haven't got even basic pay, and it's been like this from 2014 at least. For the Ukrainian soldiers, it's like, what's going on, guys? You get the money to pay the wages and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where,
Then nothing to. Yeah, I have nothing to. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
go for it.
where do you think that money's going?
Well, the problem in Ukraine, most countries they have a mafia to steal money, odd people to steal money, governments or whatever, let's say obtain more money. But for them, they looks like the culture. It's from the bottom feeders, from the small commanders to the higher up. There is like President Zelensky. He knew about the attack and he admitted it publicly that the attack. They knew about the attack of over a year ago, but then they wanted to save the economy. And then the another thing, he he wasted the shitloads of money on the roads instead of military programs. Like he fully, when he came into power, he stopped the rockets, anti, loads of stuff got stopped, and looks like they're stealing from all levels because that guy who we reported, who was in charge, commander of missing guns and so on, constantly from the armory and not even armory. It looked like the local, let's say, security, not secure intelligence teams were quite aware of it quite well
Right.
because he never got locked up. He always got away. It's like nothing never happened to him. It's like, how come? He'd been reported, guns are missing, its signatures and everything. It's like you can't just hide that the gun disappeared in the books and everywhere that gun being left in an armory. It's like some obvious things. It looks like they steal on every level. That's it. It
Yeah.
just everyone tries to profit from it. Not everyone. Everyone who have the right contacts and let's say right attitude, maybe trying
Yeah.
to profit from it. That's the problem. If you read like SBU main chief being taken off of his duties, but they knew about his shady businesses ages ago until they did something too much, and that's when they start slamming on them. It's like, but guys, you knew about them being shady and taking the mines. I think that was the mines, the bridge or the roads and everything being mined from the seaside, and they took the mines just before the assault. And it's like, how come? And that was the secret agency's job, our secret agency's job. Why you take the mines and everything just before the assault?
Mm.
Just, yeah, I don't know. It's really bad. We came with our hearts, leaving good jobs, good lives, and everything, really good lives to help them out. People pouring from their own businesses and their own pockets insane amount of money, and we're risking our lives and everything, and they still do things like this. It's like, really frustrating.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. I bet that would be very, very difficult, especially if you're knowing people dying, as a direct result of this.
Hmm.
Yeah. And how much experience have you had with, like, against the Russians? Are they having, are they, because I guess a lot of the media is saying that they're being completely defeated. Um, is that your sort of experience with them, or are they supplied well and are they moving forwards into Ukraine?
Ah, um, at the moment, looks like, yeah, they have so much more. I know more than a couple teams who is very active, and usually they get more fire than they can deliver. Like my one of my friends' team just recently tried to make an assault and realized that there was so many armored vehicles that they were far to be able to engage, and they're like top-notch guys, like the most equipped, let's say, forces in the country, and they were like, no, we wasn't able. It was too many armored vehicles, was too many, and we need to fall back and replan and so on. And one thing I think they are slowly losing, but at the same time, um, the Russians getting tired because it's cost loads of money and stuff and supplies. The intensity of fighting, at least from my personal experience, slow down.
Yes.
Makes sense as well because there is not as much moving. There is no 10, 20, 30 case per day of taking the ground from one other side. Now it's more trench warfare. It looks like it's slowed down, but in regards of how much artillery goes, I think our guys were saying we actually can feel the difference finally, that it's not only enemy artillery, shooting at us, but we're shooting at them as well. Then Hard to say, really hard to say, to be honest.
Yeah. Like from
Because
your
it's like where I, yeah,
you go, sorry.
no, go for it.
I was going to ask, like, from your experience on the front, do you think Ukraine can overcome this war and then can push the Russians back to the original border?
With the support of the world, that's a must. US and so on, with the support of the war, and maybe a couple higher up people, more than a couple higher up people, pulling the fingers out of the asses and actually start slamming and cutting the heads of the people who steals massive amount of the equipment and so on. Yeah, definitely, because I think Ukrainians now have over a million soldiers ready to fight. The people there, Ukrainians, I was amazed. I was up so many men just ready to go to fight. It's like ridiculous, phenomenal number of men. As soon as the war started, men and women were just rejected at the recruitment offices because there's so many ready to go and fight. So many. It's like I never been in a country where there's so many people ready to fight. And yeah, I think they can with the support and changing mentality and making some improvement in regards to literally the corruption of stealing left and right, vehicles constantly disappearing as well, and so on. It's like, yeah, they definitely would win. Definitely, they will win,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah. But how much faith, I guess, do you have in that corruption will get sorted out, I guess, sooner rather than later?
I think more as I said before, from the small companies or charities who donates vehicles or a couple of helmets to the larger companies. By the sound of it, it's more and more of them wants the foreigners to deal with the transportation organization and so on. As simple companies maybe deliver a couple vehicles per week to the front. The guys driving the cars from point A to point B, literally into the front, and making the pictures and showing, guys, these vehicles definitely reached the front. Did not stay in Kiev and some fat commander haven't stole them, hit them and sold them or whatever. Then I think, yeah, it will improve because the pressure will go higher and higher. There's more and more projects I hear when huge companies want to implement their own logistics teams made of the foreigners who they know definitely will do the job.
Right.
Then hopefully that will start poking, let's say, that start when you start poking the fingers in a certain people, they probably will need to step up, like what happened with the SBU commander, the main chief. They needed to change because too many people from other countries find out about what's going on. Then hopefully it will happen as soon as possible, because now when the guys see loads of heavy equipment, then the country should have enough anti armored vehicles equipment to smash them, but they don't have any. It's like, how come? Those guys are the top of the food chain. They should have anything they need, to be honest. Where it all disappeared.
Yes. Of course. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's it's difficult, isn't it? That level of corruption.
Yes, it is. It's like I said, very frustrating. Our
Yeah.
own friends, as you know, did and so on, because pure level of corruption. It's like, guys, it's not even skill of the enemy, just literally pure corruption.
And the Russians you have come up against personally, and I guess with your teams, are they well trained soldiers? Are they well equipped? Or are they more like conscript soldiers with no idea?
It depends where. I think what I noticed, the more skilled guys, they don't get captured or killed as easily, but the ones the conscripts you call, those probably we get around. But what I noticed personally, let's say the same Epin and Bucha, they left loads of not only dead bodies and so on, but they left loads of marks of their heavily drinking. And
Mm.
the interesting thing, they were banning those places. It's like they were opening their own clubs of drinking, and after they retreat, they ban everything and so on. It's like everywhere was, everything smashed and so on. There was, what kind of a professional soldier will come and break every door and smash everything, ban and drink intensively. They drinking like myself. I think I had my first welcome 2 shots of spirit, 2 shots, and that's it in like 2 or 3 months time when I joined a new team, and that's it. And we were finding loads and loads of leftovers of alcohol, and that for me was a big thing. How professional you are if you consume such amount of alcohol.
Mm.
And then the people, the same ones, yeah, and we were fighting a lot. But Bucha we had the chance to speak with more with locals, and they were saying, look, at the beginning they were stealing mattresses and beddings and so on. We understood, but when they start breaking into the shops, stealing alcohol and demanding for sex, pay sex, and if people refuse, then they would rape, and so on, left and right. And it's like, how come highly skilled soldier could do such a thing? I know we do violence and so on, but we do violence to the enemy, not to the civilians. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's until now I'm quite shocked with the attitude, and they've been fighting like this from the old days. When you look at the history, they always been rapings and lootings and so on, and drinkings. Because like in my country, most of my father age people, they all served to the Red Army. It was not optional. It was, all you go serve or we're just gonna shoot you on a spot. And all these stories was about heavily drinking. Looks like since 50 years ago or so, they haven't changed. And that's how come they allow the commanders and so on so heavily drinking and looting and raping and so on. It's like, where's the professionals? That's not a professional's job. Can't imagine professional acting like this. It's like, just maybe I don't understand something about the warfare, but I've been in more than a couple places, and even some very, very bad places where civilization barely exists. But even there, civilians was big no. Enemy is enemy, but if it's civilian, you're not gonna do things what they were doing or drinking so much when you're operational. It's like, yeah, it really, really, really surprised me. Then, yeah, my personal experience, the poorly trained, poor, well equipped in regards of heavy equipment like tanks and BTRs, BMPs, and so on, all the big toys, which is harder, to take down with what we have. Otherwise, they constantly were using artillery. It's really hard to get to them. They were constantly, anything moves, they will kill. It's a civilian, or it's my own eyes. I remember I passed 3 young men in Erpin, and other team which were closer were planning to approach those 3 young men, and it opened up. The artillery from the Russian side were hammering those kids. They smashed them into bits. I probably was like 150 meters watching, the artillery work, and they were just hammering that place, absolutely annihilating. Then why you would use so much artillery on the civilians? That's again, how professional is this?
Yeah.
I haven't came across since day one till now, till to where we say, wow, that was professional, the guys knew what they were doing. No, no, not from my personal experience. I truly believe they should have experienced soldiers, because they've been fighting in many places, because most countries which supporting them being occupied by them anyway. Then they should, but I haven't came across any professionals so far.
Does that make you think that maybe Russia just has not yet deployed their professional units, or are those units just not as trained as we might think?
They deployed from when you speak to the guys who've been, like I said, in a fight from 2005 and 14 and so on. They said they actually deployed majority of the experienced fighting force at the beginning of the war.
Right.
And as you know, at the beginning of the war, they were taking just phenomenal amount of casualties, phenomenal amount of casualties. We were making some serious damage at the beginning, until it became more trench warfare after the Kiev got defended, all that side from Belarus got defended, and we start moving the other side, east and south. That's where the trench warfare start digging. That's where we start. It's became much harder, ridiculously harder to identify, actually, kill someone and so on. If you had effective fire and so on, it's so much harder to identify. But yeah, that's, I think, in the beginning they send their best boys. Most of them died, which of course they will have some smarter units who probably try to be refilled with the new manpower. But yeah, I know the only thing that the Air Force still have plenty of power.
Yes.
Uh, that's what we be advised to remember from US. Like I said, we had a serious visit, and the guy said, "Don't forget, they have still plenty of Air Force left in them. Then, but why they not using it yet?" It's
Yes.
like,
And that's something that I have been pondering on massively as well, is the overwhelming power of the Russian Air Force, and that it seems like it's just not getting used. What's your thoughts on that?
at the beginning they were using a lot of the Air Force, but they were taking like phenomenal again amount of the planes and stuff taken down.
Mm.
We hear that the pilots were like literally refusing to go in, and you have loads of videos in general of a large amount of Russian soldiers saying, "Nah, we didn't come here to do what, they've been, how to say, tricked into coming in the certain places, fighting and so on, or given the jobs which are incapable to doing so." Of themselves are saying so. There's plenty because myself, I speak Russian because I was born. When I was born, my country was still under Russia suppression. We
Yes.
were still part of the Tsar, and yeah, it's stayed. There's plenty of videos of them saying we didn't want to go to fight here and so on and so on. We're fully refusing to go any further because we're not trained and we wasn't ready for that kind of a specialized fighting and so on. I think they probably can't do much as they would like to, because you can use your Air Force, but then you need someone to fill the ground as well. It's
Yeah.
like it's like a half job. It's like a starting the engine. Yeah, engine is working, but there is no fuel to drive the car. And I think they probably paranoid that the whole NATO or something could trigger. The war could be triggered with the NATO. They could be keeping it for the bigger problems in case it would happen. Yeah, then I think that's two reasons. One is they're incapable to fill up the areas which they, let's say, would bomb or so on, and the second one, they paranoid and they're waiting for bigger war.
Yes, because that's, I guess, a bit of what I've seen is I think that maybe that's more so that Russia is waiting for, like, keeping a lot of equipment back in case, NATO does come, because like the evidence of the really modern tanks and really modern planes, at least from my opinion, I just haven't seen it, and I'm surprised, because I sort of thought, well, hang on, there's not much that Ukraine would have in its like in its back pocket to be able to shoot down like a Su-57 or something. I'm like, why are they not using this? Or is this because they are paranoid that if NATO comes in, that they will still need that equipment and can't lose it early?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Have
yeah. Probably.
you go,
Yeah.
sorry. No, yeah, you go.
I wanted something to say and I forgot, to be honest.
Oh, sorry.
Ah, I just understood. Yeah, I just realized what I wanted to say.
Go.
Let's don't forget there is a different mentality. I think yourself, you have been deployed into the countries where cultures are very different.
Right.
Fighting and locals, from the small things to fighting, they're very different mentalities. And let's don't forget Russians in regards of stealing and corruptions. They probably one of the how to say, they laundered loads of money, because I think when the Putin went into war, he been lied to that all those money which been invested into the mighty Red Army actually been loads of stolen and laundered and so on. If Ukraine can manage to steal so much equipment and so on, and laundering and stealing, all that shady stuff while they've been attacked, try imagine what's going on in Russia.
Yes.
They stealing and corruption, and how they laundry the money, like when they were retreating from Irpin and Bucha, we had some of the most what they call, there was one of the largest or most intense artillery assaults, not assaults, let's say artillery discharges in the whole war. And we were joking, we're saying Russians actually they did it purposely just to write it off the ammunition and so on, because not all ammunition which been shoot actually been shot out and so on, because then they can steal, sell, and so on. Don't forget, so many of the commanders need to cover the big projects, let's say. Then it could be that yes, they have some parade equipment, but it's not as much as the Putin even himself thought, because the corruption is ridiculous in that country, literally beyond understanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Different culture, very different culture on stealing and obtaining stuff which shouldn't be yours, especially when your neighbors needs it and so on. But different mentality.
Yeah, it's definitely something, I guess, and you say correctly, I come from like the Australian Army, and like the Australian Army has corruption through the networks, but I couldn't imagine what it's like in a foreign army, like say, for example, like Russia, how much corruption there must be. Like I think if Australian colonels get away with it, like how much must the Russian colonels be able to get away with, I guess.
It literally beyond understanding, because that's what my missus reminds me. She said, look, you've been mainly serving in professional armies and professional companies and so on, where yes, they do their own job, but not that when personal weapons disappears from the armories. I never even in some African countries, there was your personal weapon to disappear. That's like absolutely beyond stupidity. Then try imagining what's happening on the Russian side, and they've been always like this. Everyone who served in the army, they were saying they were stealing left and right, anything they can, and even things what they can is like ridiculous amount they were stealing even then. And as we see, the mentality haven't changed a lot. They still drinking a lot, disobedient, unorganized, and so on. Then it could be just part of their culture.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Can you, without, I guess, giving away anything, can you tell me about your experience before this war?
I was in African countries doing mainly private jobs, and there was quite a bit fighting and so on. Then I seen quite a bit of a corruption and so on, and then I served in my own country for many years, and let's say more on the lines, doing the job what I like. And yeah, that's the most I can tell you, to be honest.
No, that's absurd. That's absolutely fine. Can you tell me a little bit about the situation that was inside Bucha and Irpin, because there's so much misinformation out there, I guess, on both sides. Everything from how bad it was all the way through to propaganda machines saying that a lot of it was staged. Like the casualties on the road were staged and everything like that. But I'd like to hear it from the source, like your best explanation of what happened there from your own eyes.
Yeah, from my own eyes, from my own experience, like I said, I seen guys being and people being killed by their own artillery, or not their own, by the Russian artillery. And they were shooting anything what moves, literally anything they registered, they will deliver loads of artillery rounds. Let's say when we were coming into Erpin, our artillery units were in the forest, and there they were using actually in the city. They were all over the city, moving the artillery, depending on what kind of a let's say equipment they're using. But some we actually seen ourselves when they shoot from one spot and from another spot, and they're using the houses and the people as the cover, the Russians. And identifying the targets, they were shooting literally anywhere. Anything moves, we we always identify and so on, and double check and get in contact with the other teams and so on. And you just don't shoot anything what moves. But for them it's like, was ridiculous. The amount of people killed and their own stories and so on is just beyond. It's like I said, all those places where they drank, and so many banned places and trashed places. Anywhere we come across where the Russians, where everything was smashed and stolen, and just full on looting. Full on looting. Our places, it could be the 15 in the same building, and expensive, especially Bucha is it's the very, let's say, high-end city, high-end part of the Kiev. I would say that's where the rich people would live. There was poorer areas, but there was large amount of very, very rich areas, very rich houses, and so on. And where we were, like you said, keys of the cars and expensive alcohols and so on, everything left. Our guys didn't touch much stuff. But where
Yeah.
the Russians been, everything been wiped out, absolutely wiped out. In one place in Bucha, I remember one guy, he's like fighting age guy, but you can see, have some kind of a strong disability. And he said, well, the one day the tank was, Russian guys were drunk in a tank and driving around and in no combat zone. There was no combat going on for a while in that area. And they said they, how he said, they thought that there was a sniper in the building and they start shooting at the building. It's like, and his mom confirmed the same story and so on and so on. There was so many stories when them just shooting at people,
Mm.
which is makes sense. The stage, well, ask those guys who've been there. I had some people telling me how it was in Bucha. I said, wait, I was one of the first people to go in there, and we were the last ones to leave.
Yes.
Because we were after the Bucha got defended and towards the Gostomel, that's it. We were straight away redirected in less than a week into the south side of the country, because we were actually, a direct action.
Mm.
Then how people can tell, I still hear those stories, and I say, wait, can you listen to me? Then try listen to me. I've been there, and I've been not been sitting in a trench or something where I've been moving a lot, different unit, different places. Then
Yes.
it's not from one spot, let's say stage spot. If someone would say, well, maybe it was stage for you all, but it's not. Andy, who been captured, first his video was really smart. It's all over. It's quite hidden, but it's all over the internet. They tried to probably someone to hide it. Andy, who got captured, in the first interview, he pretended to be a bit of more volunteer and so on. He was playing smart, but then you can see they cracked him. And the second and third videos, he was saying about the butcher that he didn't see any bodies and so on. And like, mate, you was in my team, in my fire team, not the battalion, not something, not the platoon. We were in the same fire team. We
Right.
seen the same bodies, we seen the same deaths, we did the same fighting. But I fully understand that's how the propaganda works. They good at torturing people, the Russians, and it's my Andy. We
Yeah.
mates fought so many weeks and months, and now you telling that nothing was happening there. And that's how they use propaganda. It's like ridiculous. That's my guy. We've been there until the last day. I swapped the teams when we moved towards the south, but we were in the same team until the last day in the Bucha. And you see the same guy who been there because he been captured. Now they're using him as someone who says, no, there was no bodies, there was no killing, there was nothing. It was everything clean.
Yeah.
What the stories of the people and our own eyes and our own, let's say, actions while we've been there. Yeah, that's how, let's say, how much I can say, I guess, without
No.
repeating too much.
No, for sure. And that's why I appreciate you so much speaking to me on this, because, I've confirmed that you're legit and that it's from your own eyes rather than third, fourth, fifth hand information, which seems to be everything out here, to be honest.
Mm.
Have you read the article reported from Amnesty International, basically accusing Ukraine of basically accusing them of war crimes? Can you give any insight into that if you've read that article?
Well, like I said, I went through 3 teams so far, and like I said, there was quite serious amount of my close friends dead and injured and so on. I'm on the holidays for now over a month, and I try to keep away of any unnecessary information, unless it's my own guys who is in a hospital or
Yes.
someone is having businesses. No, I haven't read, but I can roughly guess where it's all going. Then, if you want, you can give me a quick brief, and I will share my opinion on that matter, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I guess the big accusations are that the Ukrainian soldiers didn't really provide any evacuation for people in civilian areas, and that they were staying in like civilian houses, and like occupying civilian areas while there were still civilians in those areas, using like hospitals as somewhere to like stage attacks out of or store weapons, and things along those lines. More, I guess, the way I read it, if it was true, was more humanitarian laws being broken rather than, I guess, some war crimes. It was more, yeah, they were fighting in civilian areas. They knew there were civilians out of civilian buildings and out of things like hospitals and all that. But I guess you have a lot better insight than myself.
Yeah, I can use only my personal experience so far. Hmm. When we came in, we used a couple of schools to stay before we got our contract signed up and so on. But after that, we were moving into buildings and so on where there is no people. Even if there was, like they say, the last parts of the airpin just before going into Bucha, the we never had a single firefight or anything to jeopardize the civilians. Never, ever, ever. And I never heard anyone being, to be honest,
Mm.
injured unnecessary or using live targets, because uh, if you're gonna start, how say, disappointing the local people, your own people, that's like well, you're asking for losing the war and so on. Like I
Mm.
said, I personally haven't heard anything anywhere. Like I said, our artillery was hitting from the forest. All fighting was coming from the forest, while the Russians were directly using the buildings and so on to fight.
Yes.
The buildings we were using to fight nearly always was empty, and if it wasn't, it was just before we moved somewhere else and so on. It's like I said, I haven't had a single time when the civilians got involved because of us
Mm.
so
No,
far.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, thanks for that insight. I do appreciate that. What about
because like
in your Donetsk city? Because I know there is definitely some, at least it could be propaganda, but evidence and people I've spoken to in that city who say that Ukrainian artillery is indiscriminately hitting that city.
mm, you see, Donetsk. The problem with Donetsk is the it's highly pro-Russian side of the country,
Hmm.
and a couple other sides pro-Russian. There is a really serious issue with the so many pro-Russian civilians and stuff who passing the information constantly to the enemy and so on. For me, it's hard to say anything about how they conduct the fighting against all those, let's say, spies, if you can call it, and so on. I really don't know.
Hmm.
And yeah, hard to say. At least anyone who I know never admitted shooting a civilian or using direct artillery, any kind of engagement so far, to be honest.
Yeah, right. But do you think there could be more done from the Ukrainian like resources to like protect civilians or provide evacuations, or do you think that's being handled fairly well?
You see, the problem is the Russians have been continuously doing those like ambushes. They agree of green corridors, and then they absolutely annihilate.
Hmm.
There was one they call Katyol. My missus is great at the dates and the numbers. She is like absolutely phenomenal at recalling the history. And they had, I think, over 1,000 people killed just before, not this war, but before. They had some kind of a conflict, and they gave a green tunnel, the Russians, to the people to retreat. Uh, Pretty loads of soldiers and stuff there, and they all got slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered. It became one of the country's things to remember, and it's been happening constantly when green corridors been trying to mate and so on. But the Russians just like I said, I seen with my own eyes, anything moves for them. They don't care. It looks like they have infinite amount of artillery and so on. They would fire at anyone who moves.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what the Ukrainians could do, to be honest, because it's so heavily pro-Russian area. It's really hard to fight because there's probably most of those people supporting more Russians than
Hmm.
Ukrainians. And it's really hard to say. That's never a topic which I thought about too much. I just knew that it's very dangerous because it's more pro-Russian, and we need more foreign soldiers, let's say, in a foreign legion and so on, international legion, where there is more people who can speak Russian as well, because just yeah, it's a different fighting, different warfare than how it was in the other sides of the country, because that's the mainly pro-Russian areas.
Yes. And how sort of pro-Russian are those towns? Like the people left on those frontline towns, would you say that they're majority pro-Russian or just people left? Like how common is it
It
to be pro-Russian out there?
As by the sound of it, it's I would say nearly next to the majority, definitely more pro-Russian than the, because those areas, I don't know the history again. My miss is really good at it. Those areas, I think it was Russia areas
Yes.
originally, or it was settlements by the Russians. I'm not sure now. Or they sent loads of Russians like the British did in Northern Ireland and so on. They try to, dilute the local population. And I'm not sure if it's a dilution of the local population, or like the Russians did, they gave away some lands as a sorry lands, like they did in Latvia. They gave a part which is purely Russian. It's I don't remember the name now, but in that part of the town and that area, the Latvian speaks only Russian, and most of them have Russian passports and so on. That it could be the same with Donetsk. I'm not sure. I
Mm.
haven't looked into it, but by the sound of it, what I know, we were prepping for much more complicated warfare because of the amount of the pro-Russian supporters,
Mm. Yeah.
giving away our positions and so on, our movements.
Yeah, that makes it such a harder 3-4 dimensional environment if the civilians around you are calling in potentially like your locations, positions to, and handing it over to the other side to then fire upon.
Yeah, that's what probably happened with our mutual friend. The team got ambushed at really not a place they should be ambushed, and they've been ambushed very accurately. And the first mortar rounds were just perfect, straight
Yeah,
away into killed and injured soldiers, highly experienced, highly, not some 20 years boys, but men 30, 40, over 40 years old with plenty of military experience, a combat experience, and they got absolutely annihilated on the first 100 meters in the enemy territory.
yeah,
It says a lot that there is quite a lot of information leaking, or I don't know what else it could be. How come the enemy was so accurate and so good at timing and accuracy and so on? We've been mortared like to ridiculous amount, and they just don't hit you, and they use different stuff to hit you. It's like from 3 different artillery units, and we
yeah,
still, well, most of us alive. But there, the guys straight away got killed and injured. It's
yeah,
like make you wonder how come it can be from being so inaccurate and so useless into so accurate and so good, so let's say so precise killing, fighting.
yeah, absolutely. And have you come across like any of the mass graves that Russia's been accused of having of both their own and civilians, and or them burning bodies to try and apparently get rid of like some evidence of both their own killed and killed civilians?
um Proper mass graves I haven't, only the places where they banned the civil, in where whoever they banned, because like I said, there was a, again, as I repeat myself, there was loads of marks of that there was heavily drinking, because loads of
Mm.
alcohol, bottles and so on, and bodies. Then have knows. I wasn't able to identify was their own soldiers or the civilians or what, because they haven't left much after them.
Yeah. And
And
how
then
how is the morale of the Ukrainian fighters? Like, are they, are they upbeat or are they a bit beaten down? Like how's the morale currently?
it's really interesting. Like I said, in regards of being brave and wanting to fight, it really high.
Mm.
But like I just spoke to my friend recently, and they in area where there is loads of special forces guys. And they said they were all like a small, secluded gangs. They said they barely work with each other. It's like a gangland. And it's like, how come, guys, you're on the front lines and you should be the top tier? You should be like working with each other really well. You
Yeah.
know, a bit of a banter and so on. It's normal. A nag there, it's a joke there, maybe sarcasm, but no, they're like, I don't know, it's really strange. High morale, but they're still struggling to work together
Mm.
from my personal experience. Like the main thing when we were running a training for the guys, let's say closer to the front line, and one of the higher commanders, I was translating for him, and the question was given to him, how well we are supported on the front lines. And he said, depending how good is your commander with making the contacts with the local, artillery teams, with this, with this, with this, it depends how much support you will get and so on how good is the commander of speaking to others and, arranging things, which is quite odd. Like in our military, it doesn't matter how corrupted you are, but if you have a job to do or it's part of your job, it's gonna get done. It's not a question mark. It's it's like different thinking. But there, it's like, no, it looks like they need to be in the arrangements.
Yes. Yeah, that's it's a bit of a who you know, not what you know, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's ridiculous. It's a
Of
war,
course.
guys. We're all on the front line. We're all together. How come it can be, you more important than me and so on?
Yeah. And I have to ask because I know so many people will hit me up in the comments about this. But what has your experience been with, I guess, the nationalist groups in Ukraine, and as people would say, the neo-Nazi like sympathizers slash groups that people accuse of people like Azov and stuff like that? Can you sort of explain any of that?
Well, since day one, I came across my modern couple Azov guys because they have a base in Kiev as well. It's not only like most people think Azov Stalin, that's where the Azov only comes from and so on. I haven't came across of the fascism so far. I came across of couple stray not supporters likers of the Hitler, but that was a foreign guy, wait, from where? I think Brazil.
Right.
And that's the only time I came across anything like this, to be honest, personally. And like I said, I've been around quite a lot. I've been engaging with various teams and so on. Yeah, that's my personal experience, and I never heard so far about the fascism and so on. But then when you look, Europe is like we're quite well, let's say, Baltic countries is quite can be very racist, to be honest. It's not as liberal yet. They're moving towards it, but they're not. And it's strange if someone would even say that there is something towards that kind of a stuff in Ukraine when the rest of the Baltic countries, so many other countries, most of the Africa racist. If the white man never been in Africa long enough, they don't know how we've been called milking cows. Then yeah, unless we're
Yeah.
talking about proper Nazis and sympathizers of Hitler style stuff, then no, I haven't came across nothing like this. Happily, because if I would be definitely talking about it. Definitely.
Yeah, because I guess you're so open and honest about it, which I appreciate so much. And I guess people make it sound like it's everywhere. And I've been called out online too, being like, look, I haven't really seen much of it. Like I've definitely seen some stuff that's nationalist, but there's a big difference between being proud of your country and being a nationalist and being a Nazi sympathizer. Like I think that line has got blurred. I like the liberal, but like there is a line. And I'm like, look, I've seen some stuff that may be nationalist, but that stepping into that neo-Nazi, it's not as common as some groups might make it out to be. But I really appreciate you speaking on that,
Mm.
because that is like the biggest tactic of the pro-Russian groups, which I follow to get some insight on both sides of the propaganda that's coming out. Is
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
their big claim is that these I'll say neo-Nazi groups are they're everywhere, that they're not few and far between.
Mm. You see, that's the first thing which I was concerned before going to war. I spoke to a couple people who was already on the front lines and stuff, and I said, and I was the same. I was like, I don't want to be your Nazi rapist, killer, Azov, and so on. One of my friends, for like 10 years, one of my best friends over 10 years. And he was like, are you going to Ukraine fight for those people and so on? And I said, yes, I will. And he was like, I hope you're not gonna get into Azov and see how rapists and so on they are. And I said, and time will show. If what, I will let you know. And he's like, hopefully we'll survive that. And like, yeah, I hope so. And guess what? I came across many of Azov guys, and I actually spoke to the commander when I thought about going safe in Azov, but then you need to pass the selection and so on and so on. But then I got better off and I turned it down, but I still have that in mind. And like I said, I haven't came across that kind of a bullshit, which I was so worried prior to coming to the corrupted country.
Yes, yes. And on a different topic, I guess, what is your thoughts with winter approaching in the next, say, 8 to 10 weeks? There's been a lot of talk about that it will really slow down the war, and the potential Russian advance has to be within the next couple of months. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Winter warfare, as you notice, that's what so many countries try to perfect. That's probably one of the hardest warfares when you look jungle warfare and so on, even
Mm.
deserts. But they're called, it stopped the Napoleon, it stopped the Germans and the World War II and so on. You can't underestimate the winter. Then, depending how much they have, because I'm suspecting personally that the Russians don't have much power in them and resources to be able to push much harder, because you can have as much equipment as you want, but if high amount of it doesn't work as well as you would like to, and there is not enough manpower to run it and so on, I doubt they will have anything besides just more shots, and they're getting more and more desperate with their firepower and so on. And by the look of it, Ukrainians improving a bit the artillery. Like I said, the boys were saying, finally, we hammering them before the assault for 2 hours with the artillery and then taking the ground, and so on. Then I guess they will try to show that they definitely should. They will try to push, but I doubt they have enough to push properly or make any difference. And again, the attacking cost loads of lives and resources and equipment and so on. I noticed myself, attacking is cost you. It's a very costly thing. And I see as a, I don't know, boxer, professional fighter, you give the opponent to you tiring down your opponent, and then you can strike them much harder when they quite, you know, out of breath. And I think they're giving them to get out of breath, and then probably Ukrainians at some point will hit really hard because they have insane amount of reserve of soldiers, which no one talking about. There's thousands of soldiers we've seen ourselves who far from the front line, haven't been deployed yet. There is so much going on, which, well, we shouldn't be probably even talking too much, which is good because you never know what's going on the Ukrainian side. They far from using all of their resources, all of these soldiers, and so on.
Yes, right. Do you think that Ukraine would have the capacity to launch an offensive against that current occupied Russian areas?
Certain areas, yes, they have their little wins in certain areas, but like I said, yeah, well, in their place, I wouldn't see the point in doing so, to be honest.
Yeah.
Again, to to lose so much manpower, one assault, it cost them so much heavy. Like the last assault of my team, it cost lives, it cost people got injured, uh, loads of equipment got damaged, and so on. It's like, what's the point? Yeah, you got a bit of a land
Yeah.
and you lost so much, then is it worth attacking? But you never know. Maybe some commander gonna win the medal or something. You hear those stories when the guys get sent against the armored armored equipment with only AKs in their hands. I know personally someone who been given an order to attack the Russians with 4 mags in his pouches, with nothing else besides those mags, and the commander refused to do so, and he got arrested. And a couple of those guys were serving with me after that.
And what would it look like if you refused to do that attack like that gentleman, and you got arrested? What does that look like from there? Like, do you go to jail? Do you get kicked out of the country? How does that look?
There was the commander who refused. He wasn't a foreigner. Then I don't know. Probably he went to the jail. I really don't know what happened to him next. But I know that he got arrested. Other guys who was foreigners. Foreigners, we since this day, as I know, they just cancel our contract and say happy days, goodbye.
Yeah,
Because we refused to one operation. We got sent back from the front line back to Kiev. Other team agreed to go there, and like I said, they took 95% casualties. And yeah, for us it's simple, but for the Ukrainians, they have different contracts. The contracts, I'm pretty sure, is still till the end of the war, and now is until we refuse, until we cancel the contract. Then it's two different sides. It depends if you're Ukrainian or you're foreigner. Different contracts. Then I
yeah,
doubt they would jail us unless we do something really bad, but never happened. And I know many teams who refused in the end to repeat the assault into the area where will be no gain for us, only taking the casualties, and the guys get reassessed. They usually get sent back from the front line back into the commanding offices, and then officers run the investigation. And usually because of the amount of the foreigners fighting there, probably from what I experienced, probably when from 500 people, which I know, probably it's only 50 or 100 left, because we had enough of this. That's absolute bullshit. As you know yourself, someone, he got injured, and most of the guys just left. They said, "No, that's just ridiculous. What do you want us to do? You don't know how to use us properly." And even Ukrainians agreed. Some of them, they said, "We we probably will still need a year or two to learn how to use you properly, because they easily can send you to the trench and that's it. But if it's more specialized job, looks like they don't know what to do." Then yeah, that's my answer. Not the best one, but the best I could
no,
come up with.
I greatly appreciate that. And where do you think this war is leading? Like, where do you think that this is going to end? Do you think it's worth Ukraine having diplomatic talks with Russia, or not worth it?
Um, I don't know how it's now, but when I was still serving, after each talk, we had something bad happening, really, really bad, a big assault or something after each talk. I agree. People always should talk. That's the highest power we have as a species. That's why let's say, one of what the most dominating species in the world. We should use the talking, but I think it will end. For the Russians, it's hard to lose their face, for the
Mm,
Putin and the people who supports him and so on. Then I think it will run until the last ruble, ruble.
yeah, yeah,
It will run until the last, because it's hard to not hard to. They just can't say, "Oh well, we had enough. We're giving you territory back." They just can't. Just there is no way back in their mentality. You will better sacrifice the whole country and people in it than say, "Well, okay, we step back. We're not winning anything here. We're only losing." They will run until the last penny. And I just hoping that that's more like a logistic warfare at the moment, because Ukraine have to win. If they don't win, the rest of the world, it's especially close countries, Baltic countries and so on, they will be in high risk to be next, because what I assume they would do, they would lick their wounds, learn from something, learn from the war, and then they would fight from the territory of Ukraine and Belarus and so on. Who wants to fight in their own garden? It's they want to defend, because the main concern was of how the Putin was talking, that anti air defenses and so on are too close to the Russia, and they could, it's just all the defense thing. But then when they're in Ukraine, if they would control the Ukraine, and as they already control Belarus and so on, like I said, they could fight from those countries. And he always wanted to reinstate the whole mighty SSR, which Baltic countries and so on. You never know how ambitious is that madman who runs the country. Well, partially runs the country. I guess there is still some serious people who gets involved into the decision making. Can be one man.
yeah. And I guess that's my concern of this war with, I guess, as we both said, like some lack of equipment. We haven't seen like how much more does Russia have to give, and how long will it take the sanctions in place to actually start really affecting that warfighting capability, or is Russia just using a smaller percentage of power now, and potentially still has a lot more to overwhelm Ukraine?
Well, I would, so far what I have seen and so on, they're losing a lot. Look, all the businesses which closed down. That's
Yeah,
probably millions of working spots. That's millions of people not getting paid. Then so many Baltic countries and so many countries others, sending the people back and they're losing the jobs and so on. I'm pretty sure they're already getting really bad. But the mentality they had the same when they invaded the Crimea. They did exactly the same, and that's what they're advertising. We survived the sanctions when we got back Crimea or whatever they claim. And they saying people everything will be okay. We survived that. We will survive this. And don't forget the Russia. It's like a bit like Africa. It's not much mid class. It's more or you're rich or you're really really poor.
yes,
Then you see the difference. It's not as big there. Like it's say England or so many Baltic countries, Australia. Mid classes are really strong, and usually you see how bad is the corruption and so on, or how good is economy by the mid class. I would say how well is developed. As more as the mid class is developed, as more usual is the country, stable financially and so on. But they doesn't have it by the look of it. It's super rich. Moscow, they call it Moscow a separate country. Moscow and a couple other um, cities where the rich people live, but the rest of the country is really poor, because the soldiers came in, well, Russians, looters and rapists, when they came in, they were surprised about the toilets and so on, and it makes sense. They're pulling the manpower from the places where people don't have television, and I know so many people who traveled to Russia who served in the Russia and so on, and they saying they've always been like this, very low educated people and low income and so on. Yeah, I think it's just logistical warfare at the moment. Sadly, they will go until the last penny.
yeah. I guess that could get into a bit of the thing too, though, is if it is desperacy gets involved and it is a war of nutrition, then Russia does have a large population, and they've proven they're not scared to throw people at something, and they do have a massive amount of firepower still at will. It's like, where does this lead us? Like, if it is at their last ruble, what's then stopping someone pushing that big button to flatten cities?
Mm. But then you see, my question is, that's one of one of the best friends was best friend, and he's like, what about nuclear war and so on? And as you said, they still have some fighting power, but as you know, the fighting power is the nuclear weapons, um, soldiers on expense, low-skilled soldiers on expense, and serious Air Force level, but not much else, to be honest,
Yeah.
because they push they most of the armored vehicles and so on in ridiculous amounts. When you look at what they're using now, sometimes it's like, are you being serious? You can mock the equipment at the moment in certain places. Uh, I don't know. I don't know how to say.
No, I really do appreciate your insight.
Yeah. Sorry, what I wanted to say. Now I lost my thought. What's the other option? Are we draining them until they give up, or they use the nuclear weapons, or are we letting them go in and win? It's like you need to look, there is a white side and there's black side, and
Mm.
what's the outcome of it? Let's say they win the war miraculously, which is next to impossible, and they take the Ukraine, then they start draining the Ukraine resources and so on. They start rebuilding their own country, and as usual they always drain the other countries like they used ours. They took everything what they could from our country, and everything was going to Russia, or more to Moscow. And then what would happen? They would rebuild, and then guess what? Well, how it happened with the Germany? They would come out with more firepower. I doubt they would just calm down and say, okay, we finished here, it's all good, gonna keep Ukraine, Belarus, and then we're gonna be very nice after this. war. I doubt it would happen like this. Because try imagining all the soldiers coming back and all that poverty and so on. People will be angry, and that's what happened with the Germany. That's how Hitler managed to get so many people manipulated. He played off a guilt game and so on, that we lost so much and we can get back so much and so on. And he played that game, and that's what Putin could easily play. The world
Yeah.
just drained us down, and it's how to say, the rest of the world is guilty. And how the Putin said himself, he said, why we need the war, the world without the Russia, something between the lines, but he said himself, why we need the world without the Russia. Then you see his attitude, and the insane amount brainwashed people. They did the same in our countries, brainwashing people, ridiculously brainwashing. And yeah, it will go until the last. And if the Ukraine loses, I think the rest of the world will pay later on even a higher price, because ah, Ukraine, once they gave in, and when they gave in, they lost, I think, 9 million people or something from the hunger. They literally put the country on a, they called it great something, great
Was that the
starvation.
agricultural crisis in like 1919 or something in Ukraine? Yeah, I think it was something like
If
millions of
my
people.
yeah, if my missus would be here, she would explain. But that's how the culture have so many different. The cuisine is really advanced. They have insane amount of different foods because of the hunger and so on. People were needed to be inventive on the foods and so on. And she said, yeah, they lost like 9 million people or something. I don't remember now. She's the one who remembers the numbers and dates and her own history. But she said, even till this day, people understand that giving up, you will lose more people, because the Russian tactics haven't changed since. The same did in Lithuania. Why you would need to send 30,000 or 30 or 300,000 people to Siberia to die and so on? They were annihilating our country, absolutely annihilating, killing left and right. We had torture houses, even the smallest cities. Like I was in a small city, which I don't know now, maybe have 1,000 people or something, and they had a torture house there by KGB, the Russians. And I know one is in Vilnius in Lithuania on the main street. There is a huge building where the people were tortured, and it's the same happening in most places. Then there is no other way than to continue fighting. There is nothing else. I don't know what else could be done.
Yes. And do you think that the West is doing enough?
Nah, there is loads of talking, and we're gonna give this and this and this. West not only need to give more, but need to control it better. As we spoke, damn, Ukrainians are still very corrupted, even when the war happening, and still trying, so many of them, make the profits. The help have to be more precise, more surgical. Like I said, our mutual friend spoke about getting their own logistics and so on sorted, and making sure that all the munitions and equipment, everything actually reaches the front lines or where it need to be. Then more help, because like my side friend, where they heavy fighting going on vehicles with, and the area is pretty hard. It's intensive fighting, and this is how come. Then help, but more precise help, be more strict. Put the fingers on those corrupted Ukrainians, where everything travels. Because like our commander would take a bunch of grenades and ammunition. In 3 days, it all disappears. Not a single grenade seen, and 10,000 of 5.56 rounds disappears. Like, are you being serious, mate? Like, serious? Those ammunition, that's for the front line.
That's crazy.
That's a yeah, it is. That's why I'm so, like I said, so disappointed.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, or do you think we've covered most things?
I don't know, to be honest. No, I've been on that negative negative thing for too long, and I tried even to evade now those talks about killings and the corruption and and disagreements and disinformation, which is so much. It's like, especially when you tell people, no, I was there, I seen with my own eyes what happened, and he's like, nah, but I watched the news. Maybe, but I have been there. You know me for what 20, like 7 years. How come you believe news more than me? But yeah, it's life. Now that's it from my side. I hope, like I said, I hope they will pick up the investors and so on, and all the charities will actually make sure that the stuff travels where it need to travel, and then I think we, with Ukrainians and the rest of us, will definitely win against such a evil, sadly, nation. Was
Yes.
Who
Well,
thought that like this would happen again? I never thought that. I thought no point to find wars like this, because it's not like 1500 when you can capture the lands and use the slaves and so on and pillage. It's not the times to pillage and so on and slave. Is like, what's the point to kill so many people just for principle? Just doesn't make sense.
yes, yes. It's a different time in a war, which I didn't think was actually going to happen. It just made no logical sense, and even to this day, this doesn't make sense.
Sure, it doesn't with our mentality. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Our mentality. They think differently, very differently, sadly.
no, you're very correct. Well, brother, I really I can't thank you enough for talking to me for, I'm not sure how long it's been, an hour and a bit. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your insight. And although my audience won't know who you are, they will be very appreciative of your firsthand insight on exactly what's happening on the front line. And I wish you all the best.
Yeah, no worries. You're more than welcome, and hopefully some people get a bit more clear insight. Sadly, I can't be sometimes clear enough, but yeah, I did my best.
No,
I hope.
brother, you did very, very well, and it'd be great to meet you for a beer rather than having to do this over online.
We probably will. We probably will. Your
I'd say we
place.
definitely will.
Yeah, I love Australia. It's a great place. It's one of the favorite countries I visited in my lifetime so far, and I traveled a lot. And we probably will catch up one day.
Perfect, brother. Well, you stay safe out there, mate.
Yeah, you too, and good luck.
Okay, thank you, brother. Cheers.